There are so many ways that I preserve tomatoes. One of the ways is dehydrating and storing in oil, and that's what I'm going to show you today. Hi guys, I'm Elissa at Moat Cottage Homesteading.
Wash your tomatoes and place them on a clean dry tea towel to get rid of most of that water. Remove your cores and slice your tomatoes into equal size wedges so that they'll fit into the dehydrator and the trays will sit nicely together and there won't be any gaps between the trays. You want all the pieces of tomato to be fairly even sizes so that they dry at the same time. When choosing tomatoes for dehydrating, the paste style tomatoes are better suited for dehydrating because there's more meat in them and they're not just full of water. Place your wedges on the dehydrated trays, leaving the spaces between the tomatoes for the air to circulate around the dehydrator while the dehydrator is drying the tomatoes. Once your dehydrators are filled up, turn your dehydrator on to 55 degrees Celsius or 130 degrees Fahrenheit, or the closest that your dehydrator will go to in those temperatures. Now, the amount of time you're going to be dehydrating really is variable depending on your machine, but tomatoes do take a fair amount of time. Keep an eye on your tomatoes. Every few hours, rearrange the trays so that you're getting even airflow around the dehydrator or the tomatoes. Your tomatoes will be ready when the wedges feel dry but are slightly pliable. Home-dried tomatoes will be firmer than commercially dried tomatoes. When testing dehydrated food, let it completely cool down before you test again to make sure they are dried properly. You don't want to put anything away that isn't dried properly because it will go mouldy and spoil. Store your tomatoes in an airtight container. I'm using a ball mason jar because they're fairly narrow and you want the oil that we put in to cover the top of the tomatoes, and if it's a wide container that's going to be a lot more oil. So I'm using the ball mason jar. I fill up the oil. I'm using a nice olive oil. Remove all the air bubbles because you don't want any air getting in because oxygen creates mold. And place the lid on.
The important thing is to keep the tomatoes covered in oil at all time. So if you need to add oil at any time to make sure the tomatoes are always covered, just top up the jar. You can use the oil in recipes as well. It has extra flavor. And if you want to add dehydrated herbs or dehydrated garlic to your jars, that also gives good flavor as well. So that's how I dehydrate tomatoes and store them in oil. Now I just keep them in the fridge and use them as I want. They're great on pizzas and in casseroles and on top of toast and avocado and cheese. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.